What's going on, ParaTruthers? Welcome to a brand new episode of ParaTruth Reborn. This is a pre-recorded show on 107.7 FM New Orleans, 105.3 on the Gulf Coast, and United Public Radio Network. My name is Justin.
And I'm Erik.
And tonight, folks, we are going to prepare for a chilling journey into the heart of the Bermuda Triangle, where countless vessels have met their demise. From the unexplained disappearance of Flight 19 to the enigmatic fate of the SS Cotopaxi, will unravel the stories of these maritime tragedies and uncover the secrets that may hold the key to their very fate. Now, we've talked about this, at least personally in the past, but kind of what is your main knowledge about the Bermuda Triangle?
I mean, primarily it sits within the North Atlantic over by Miami, Puerto Rico, and Bermuda. And that it's a place in which many haunting tales have taken place. Primarily ships and planes that have disappeared, both commercially and also personal vehicles that have disappeared without any trace whatsoever and no explanation. So it's a place that's really been built around superstition, and has a lot of theoretical paranormal anomalies that people believe have happened there to create these disappearances.
Yeah, and looking at the science or scientific explanation behind it, some of it was kind of weird, and we'll get into that. And to me, doesn't really explain everything away. Mm-hmm. But some of the most historical disappearances and accounts there are quite a few, actually. But I came across a small list. The Ellen Austin happened in 1881. This incident involved a ship finding a seemingly abandoned vessel in the Sargasso Sea, which then became empty before the Ellen Austin could take it in tow, and the Ellen Austin never returned. Joshua Slocum in 1895, the famous solo circumnavigator, vanished on a voyage between Martha's Vineyard and South America, with his disappearance attributed to the area by some, but they don't know for sure if it was him going through the Bermuda Triangle that claimed him not coming back. The USS Cyclops, which is an awesome name in my personal opinion, being a fan of Greek mythology, that happened in 1918. This large Navy cargo ship carrying over 300 men vanished without sending an SOS distress call. No wreckage was ever found. And I believe that is kind of one of the most common things that happens when people are claimed, quote unquote, by the Bermuda Triangle, right? They didn't send out an SOS. They didn't send any communication, or communication is just cut off, right?
Yeah, as far as we know, it would appear that a lot of these in most cases, a lot of these ships and planes have disappeared without any distress call whatsoever. And yet there have been some that did receive, like the mainland did receive SOS calls, but by the time they could reach them or find them, they would just vanish with no trace and no explanation as to how or why or what the SOS call really was truly about. There are a number of different explanations or possibilities, which we'll get into, but some of it has to deal with instruments simply going wild or becoming lost. The pilots or the captains of the ships becoming lost somewhere, not knowing where they were, so kind of becoming disoriented, which could also play into the disappearances as well, as you'll see. But yeah, a lot of these cases, there simply was no SOS. They were just there on the map, and then boom, they were gone. Same with like radar. They're on the radar, and especially later in the 1900s. They would appear on the maps on the radar spectrum, and they would beam, but then all of a sudden they just stop, and that's how we find out that some of these particular vehicles have disappeared. And of course, they send a number of vehicles out to try to retrieve these missing boats and planes, but with no luck whatsoever.
Yeah, because they're usually using sonar to ping the the water's floor, right?
Well, sure, yeah. When they're looking for, when they're looking at their last known location, and that's part of the issue is when all you have is a last known location. That I mean, if we're talking about a plane, for example, moving at relatively high speeds, once it disappears, it could keep traveling
Mm-hmm.
off a radar for who knows how far. So if you're looking in like a 20 square mile range of what you think this plane or what this plane's last location was, it might be 60 to 80 miles off of that, from all we know. And not to mention, you have to consider the various tides, strong tides happening in the area as well. So even if a ship goes down or a plane, it could be carried away real fast on the various currents.
Yeah. Well, yeah. That was what my thinking was: is if a ship is going down, or if it does go completely submerged, the undercurrent could grab it and still drag it along even
Right.
after it's gone under. Okay. Some of the others here was the Proteus and Nereus, I believe is how it's pronounced, in 1941, and that was the sister ships of the USS Cyclops. Also, just disappeared without a trace in the same region, and I believe same situation. No SS distress was sent. Flight 19, which is one of the most famous flights to go missing there in 1945. 5 U.S. Navy torpedo bombers went missing after their leaders' compasses reportedly malfunctioned. A rescue plane sent to find them also disappeared the same day. Star Tiger and Star Ariel, which sounds like some really awesome names there. 1948 and 1949, 2 British passenger planes disappeared within a year of each other with little warning or evidence of what happened. And then the Revan in 1958, a racing yacht with 5 people on board, failed to return after a gale. A passing shrimp boat reported seeing figures trailing from ropes, but a rescue wasn't attempted, which kind of baffles me, in my opinion. I get they were a shrimp boat, but why would you not try and help people that are in the water?
I mean, if we had the answers to every question.
Well, well, and there is this kind of relationship with the Bermuda Triangle in the South American area, and then the Dragon Triangle. Since you put that information in our notes, I'll have you kind of go over what the Dragon's Triangle is.
Sure. So the Dragon's Triangle is very, very similar to the Bermuda Triangle. And really, when you look at it on a map, there seems to be almost a clear connection from the Bermuda Triangle through the Earth to the Dragon's Triangle, which kind of brings this whole idea or theory that there's some sort of wormhole here, and that maybe some of these missing or disappearances of the ships and planes have actually disappeared and ended up over near Japan somehow as they traveled through these wormholes. Now, the Dragon's Triangle, also known as the Devil's Sea, primarily is a region in the Pacific Ocean near Japan, and is known just very similarly as a Bermuda Triangle for mysterious ship and plane disappearances. Now, both of the areas, of course, that is the Dragon's Triangle and the Bermuda Triangle, are linked by theories of mysterious magnetic forces, unusual natural phenomena like rogue waves and sudden storms, and potentially volcanic activity that could cause some sort of methane gas release that, as you'll hear soon, could cause some disruptive problems for ships in particularly. The Dragon's Triangle, of course, is also rooted in ancient Chinese mythology about dragons causing the turmoil, hence its name. Now, the region itself within the Pacific Ocean is often described as extending from Japan to the Mariana Islands and Guam. And the name comes from a centuries-old Chinese myth about dragons living deep beneath the sea, causing sudden storms, whirlpools, and fog. And if you ever look at art of like ancient art, in particular about dragons, you'll see they're often tied to the water and the skies. And the winds, and so you kind of see how storms and tidal waves and stuff can come about because of these dragons. It's also known, of course, as the Asian Bermuda Triangle because they call it the Asian Bermuda Triangle because it's lesser known than the Bermuda Triangle. It's kind of like a sister triangle, but it's not as well documented as the Bermuda Triangle is, despite its similarities.
Mm-hmm.
Now, the area became a real public concern in the 1950s, much later than the Bermuda, when Japanese officials declared it a danger zone due to the significant number of vanishing ships. A Japanese government research vessel, in particular, the Kaiyu Maru No. 5, vanished there in 1952 while investigating the incidents themselves. Once again, very similar to what we see in the Bermuda Triangle, where a ship or a plane goes out to find a missing ship or plane, and then disappears itself. Very odd, of course. That's something you wouldn't think would happen, all considering, and yet it seems to happen.
Well, and that's the fascinating thing about this is there's these disappearances, but although we can't explain them, science is telling us there has to be a rational explanation to it.
Right.
And for some of these cases, it's very possible. But, some of the theories that are out there about the triangles, and I've heard this for both, is Atlantis technology. Some theories propose that the lost city of Atlantis is located in the area of Bermuda Triangle, but they also don't know where Atlantis was and how far the Atlantis reach was, if Atlantis was even real. Right. Its active crystal technology is causing malfunctions in modern vessels. And the reason I bring the whole location up is because I've heard it's close to the Mediterranean Sea. I've heard it's close, to the Bermuda Triangle. And we'll probably be doing a whole episode on Atlantis if it's fact or fiction, but there is a huge speculation that the Atlantis was never a thing. Right. Other theories are alien abduction. One fringe theory suggests that extraterrestrials are using the area as a base for abducting ships and aircraft. And I have seen multiple theories about not UAPs, but what do they call them? Underwater.
I don't know what they call those.
I
underwater phenomena. Yeah. I mean, what else would you call them?
Unidentified water vessels, phenomena, something. But there's been theories about that too. That vessels or alien craft are actually going underwater to bases that they have on the ocean floor, or that the humans, alien that are working together do.
I mean, there's been plenty of evidence just recently released showing some odd phenomena in which it would seem that some sort of aerial craft moving at super speeds would dive into the ocean and then come back out of the ocean, and that's through military technology in which it's been viewed. So these are things that have been released, or videos released by the military themselves, which is very interesting, declassified images and videos. So the fact that they're releasing that kind of stuff and showing us that, yes, they noticed something flying into the water and back out of the water and moving at speeds that they can't keep up with themselves, and not to mention moving at angles at those high speeds that our own modern airplanes can't do, kind of just, it really attests to the possibilities of what's really out there, and in particular, in this case, within the triangles.
And that was happening around the time of the whole orb situation, drone situation last year, right?
I think so. All these years are...
Yeah, they're all blending together with the weirdness that's going on. And then the last part, and there's, I'm sure, tons more theories. These were just the most well-known theories. Time vortexes or portals. Some stories describe the area as a vortex or portal to another dimension, or a time warp that pulls vehicles into the past or future.
Mhm.
And part of that is from some ships that have gone missing, have somehow just randomly returned as ghost ships.
Mhm.
Um, and I want to say that they thought that Amelia Earhart's flight had come to the same demise around the, I believe it was the uh, Dragon's Triangle.
Hmm.
Um,
Well, and I know like one thing in particular is there has been documentation, video documentation of personal aircraft that would fly through the Bermuda Triangle and show these vortexes, or at least it would show their gauges,
yeah,
giving all weird electronic distortions and whatnot, not being able to tell north from south and east from west. But then they would compile these videos with stories of these people who said that as they were flying, it seemed as if it was only a couple of minutes, only to come out of it many hours past. So there was a loss of time somewhere within there, which would suggest a time vortex or portals, or in some cases alien abduction, because that's very
right,
similar to those stories as well, where it seems only minutes pass and yet they come 2 hours later.
right, yeah. And trying to think, I haven't really delved into recent ones, but I mean, I pay attention to a lot of articles that come out. I haven't seen anything where anything has happened in the recent past about the Bermuda Triangle or the Dragon Triangle. Have you?
No, I haven't, but I think that's primarily because there's been other news that has taken up, and I think that's one thing we need to consider. Despite the seemingly numerous amounts of evidence that pile up over the triangles, there are a number of third-party companies that come out and say, insurance companies in particular is one, also the military, that say that these disappearances are really no different than any other disappearances around the world over the oceans, and that primarily they seem to be very similar in the amount of disappearances as there are in high traffic areas, primarily with ships, but also with planes. So it's very possible that the only reason that we're so focused on the Bermuda Triangle and the Devil's Triangle, or the Dragon's Triangle, the Devil's Sea, Dragon's Triangle, is because we're hearing more news of them coming from there, because there's already this superstition surrounding them. When in reality, the same thing's happening everywhere else too. We just don't hear about that.
Mm-hmm. Right. So, some of the scientific explanations here. Severe weather. The region is prone to severe weather, including powerful water spouts and other storms, which can pose a significant hazard to ships and aircraft. That one makes a lot of sense.
Mhm.
And
Well,
why an
yeah,
SOS wouldn't have gone out,
for
or,
sure. Yeah, and that does make sense, because especially in that area, we tropical storms they pop up out of nowhere. I just last year in North Carolina there was a tropical storm that kind of developed off of a hurricane, and we did not expect it. It wasn't supposed to happen. We woke up one morning and basically the whole condo was swaying. The whole house was swaying back and forth, high winds, and the area of Carolina that I was in ended up hitting a record of most rain dropped within just a couple of hours, and we were flooded in for a long time, like with 6 foot of water all around us. And it's not uncommon within tropical regions for storms to just pop up. Same thing happens here in Cleveland, because the lakes, water tends to have a
Mhm.
significant impact on weather phenomena.
Right. Um, which kind of leads into this next one, because if you're having severe weather, you'd be having Gulf Stream issues. The The powerful and swift Gulf Stream current can pose navigational challenges, and the ocean floor in the area has many complex features, which I didn't dig into what that means, but I'm guessing there's a lot of jagged rocks, some shallow spots as well, and
Well,
stuff like
sure.
that.
And as well as very deep areas such as the Mariana Trench. So
Right,
who
right.
knows? At least I don't know. I'm sure that there's some evidence out there as to what those type of structures can do to the surface. Waves getting larger,
Yeah,
or various things like that, which can certainly happen. Or as you said, if it's shallow, ships can easily run aground and then
yep,
eventually sink.
yeah. I hate even saying this one because I feel the government, the military, and science use this one way too much. Methane gas. Theory suggests that pockets of methane gas trapped beneath the seafloor could erupt, releasing bubbles that decrease the water's density, causing ships to lose buoyancy and sink rapidly. I have heard this theory and have seen it in action, so I guess it's possible. It just really, really feels like we use that way too often.
Well, I mean, I think we use it often because there's that possibility. I mean, we basically live on a planet that is one large volcano,
Yeah,
so which is kind of scary when you think about it. But I think what's important, or what should be necessary here, and it's one thing to just make it a scientific theory, but you can easily rule it out by using science to test whether or not there was a methane gas leak, because many of our instruments, especially marine instruments used by scientists, will hear that or feel that in some way. They'll be able to sense it and let us know. Same as if if they feel a minor earthquake under the ocean, they know it. They know there's a 1.2 magnitude earthquake under the ocean, and a size of methane gas big enough to, mind you, take down like a what do you call it, like a shipping container boat, or even a military grade battleship, would be pretty significant and easy to detect. Maybe not back in the 1950s and 40s, but nowadays for sure.
rogue waves is one possibility, and it does make a lot of sense because unusually large and powerful waves could take down huge ships, especially with tsunamis and stuff like that. I know rogue waves are a little bit different than a tsunami, but if you know how big a tsunami wave will get, rogue waves can get pretty tall too. And you've been at the beach where waves are way too tall to even surf in North Carolina.
Well, sure, but when you're talking about the shore versus the middle of the ocean, considering,
Yeah,
the waves out there are significantly larger than what you can ever.
That's my point. Yeah, right.
And yeah, there are plenty. There's plenty of evidence of rogue waves. It's a real thing. It happens even on the Great Lakes, and that, of course, comes up also due to various storm elements or earthquakes or just a certain change in the wind. The earth is so phenomenal in how the magnetic field and the wind plays a factor that waves can easily be tossed and turned and become very deadly very fast, especially when a vessel is isn't expecting it.
Right. Yeah. So this one is fascinating to me, and it's interesting that science will bring it up because we do have these anomalies, magnetic anomalies, although not scientifically verified in the Bermuda Triangle region. Magnetic anomalies have been suggested as a cause for compass malfunction, but potentially sending ships and planes off course. This is one that kind of gets me because they're already saying usually not in the Bermuda Triangle does this particular phenomenon happen. Not that it wouldn't per se, but to say that that's just a scientific problem and not maybe one of those other out there theories is interesting to me.
Well, all this thing is not verified in the Bermuda Triangle, but I can tell you based on various things I've watched. One in particular is Expedition Unknown, or Josh Gates. He has done plenty of trips out to Bermuda and has shown on TV proof that these compasses at certain points have gone haywire, not understanding why or how. But it's very hard to test the magnetic field in the moment. You have to actually be there and, be able to test it somehow. So there is video proof that instruments engages tend to not work at times within the Bermuda Triangle and the Devil's Sea. But as to what exactly is causing it and how, that's the thing that's kind of, raises a lot of suspicion.
Yeah. Do you think we would still have this problem in this day and age if there was issues going on there?
Yeah, I mean, there's still things happening this day and age. Here in 2025, the stuff still happens. Doesn't mean that technology should be capable or is capable of detecting these things, but unfortunately, technology, being human made, is fallible. It's not perfect. It never can be. We have so many things within our stratosphere, our atmosphere, the oceans, the geological structure of the Earth. We can't control gravity. We can't control magnetic fields, not to the extent like the whole Earth. So there are things way out of our element that we yet have even been able to understand, let alone control and be able to beat in terms of a navigational system that isn't, troubled by these things.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I'm just, my mind is blown as far as technology is concerned about a lot of different things, how we should be more advanced in technology than we are. The last scientific theory is human error and mechanical failure. Many disappearances are attributed to human misjudgment, poor navigation, or mechanical breakdowns of equipment, which are common causes of accidents at sea and in the air. This one is a very, very plausible one, in my opinion, because human error alone, especially back in the time when we were talking about the different instances where even if you were thrown off by just a few seconds, you could have ended up somewhere completely different.
Right. I would say that this is plausible, that it is likely, in many cases, even human error. When you consider flight, was it Flight 91, right? Or
19.
Oh, I'm sorry. Flight. I always do that. Just reverse my numbers. Flight 19. When you have roughly, well, not roughly, but exactly 5 torpedo bomber planes out there, and they all go missing, it's kind of weird. And I understand that 4 of those planes are following the lead plane, but it doesn't make sense that they would all go off course. Like one of them, if not multiple, would have proper navigational systems running. But it would seem, or at least I would assume, that all of their instruments on each plane went haywire and they got lost. Either A, and there's a number of explanations of possibilities. A, they got turned around and they were much lower, to the ground, or I should say to the sea surface, sea level. I think that's what I'm looking for. Than they thought, and once coming out of like a cloud or something, they crashed into the ocean. 2, they veered way off course, not knowing where they were, and ended up losing fuel and crashing. And 3, of course, is the idea of a really bad storm that happened to disrupt all of the, not only instruments, but the ability to fly in general. But again, we're talking about 5 planes that disappeared. And then on top of that, for a ship to go out looking for these planes and that ship also disappear, that's weird. Like that's beyond weird. That's not normal. And we see that multiple times in both the Bermuda Triangle and the Dragon's Triangle, in which vehicles will go out looking for other vehicles that have gone missing and yet go missing themselves. And that's unexplainable. There should be an explanation there, and there isn't, which makes it all the more mysterious and really raises a lot of the suspicion around paranormal phenomenon.
Yeah. Well, and if there is some type of magnetic anomaly that somehow they ran through, I can see how not just human error, but mechanical failure would have happened with the compass and stuff. I remember watching a lot of documentaries back in the day about the Bermuda Triangle, and the different accounts that they would go over would always be their compasses failed.
Mm-hmm.
And set them off course. And that one just has always baffled me. The human error thing I can get behind, and even if, say for example, their mechanicals were working 100% efficiently, a boat in particular, or ship, if they would have had the captain not steering the ship at the time, he had to go somewhere and come back, and the person that was steering it in his place didn't know where they were going, or just looked away and wasn't paying attention. That is one of the biggest human errors right there, is the lack of experience doing that stuff.
Well, sure, but when you consider the environment that you're in and the various natural elements that can affect a day of travel on the seas or in the air, human error, it's not unheard of, even by the most professional and highly skilled of individuals. When you consider like air shows and these planes crashing mid-air, I mean, these are some of the best trained pilots in the world, and yet due to human error, accidents happen, and more than accidents, death happens. So to think that the education of how to steer a boat or fly a plane should be enough isn't, especially when you consider altitude sickness and again, like magnetic fields that are throwing off instruments, and you're not sure how to navigate without stars or something, something in that nature. A lot of these things that went missing didn't have the technology that we do today to keep on course. Even if the mechanical gauges had gone amiss, there's usually some sort of backup nowadays. But on top of that, again, we come back to these instances where a ship that's out looking for another ship goes missing.
Right.
And the possibility that individuals on two different ships both happen to have human error that caused the ship to disappear. Well, that's again suspicious. And of course we'll never have answers. We just won't. Not until, our days are done and we're up in heaven and we hear everything and learn everything that ever happened in our world, right? But until then, it's like these are just mysteries. Goodness, I was caught between mysteries and mysterious. But
same thing, really.
I mean, it is. But it's just, it's unfortunate because a lot of this just leaves us with more questions than answers, as many of our topics do.
Yeah. Well, and you've kind of already mentioned this, but evidence contradicting the myths. The number of ships and aircraft that disappear in the Bermuda Triangle specifically is no greater proportionally than in any other heavily trafficked ocean area.
Right.
Which is fascinating to me.
Well, it's again, I think it's mainly because the triangles get more media
Yeah,
than
right,
anywhere else, because
right,
they have that long-standing superstition.
right.
It's yeah.
And the U.S. Coast Guard and insurance rates, the U.S. Coast Guard and Lloyd's of London confirmed that disappearances are not more frequent and have not increased insurance premiums in the area, indicating no inherent danger. Which I feel it doesn't matter how many ships go missing in those areas or planes. Um, it's still way too many, in my opinion.
Well, sure. I mean, it's definitely way too many. But when you consider, like, here, consider this, for example, Lake Erie, right? I mean, most people know what Lake Erie is, and if you know the Great Lakes at all, and the Great Lakes are famous around the world. With that said, Superior being considered one, the biggest and one of the most dangerous lakes, if not the most dangerous lake. Even with that said, Lake Erie has more sunken ships on its floor
Mm.
than all the Great Lakes combined, meaning it's taken down more ships than the dangerous Superior did. And yet, all we have for explanation in many of those cases is the fact that Lake Erie is shallow, very shallow. The ships run aground and then they sink in the deeper waters. We don't have much explanation, but the fact that there have been thousands of ships at the bottom, or that there are thousands of ships at the bottom of Lake Erie, is very fascinating and suspicious, considering. And it's no different than in the oceans. Again, Lake Erie, the Great Lakes in general, they're not a focus when it comes to disappearances, although there's been a couple of disappearances that have hit the media. But they're triangles. They've got superstar status, right? Or in this case, super triangle status, I guess. But it's the simple fact that anybody could take, in this case, a missing charter of some sort, and blow it up to a level in which so many people become interested and are talking about it, that we start focusing in on the areas in which this happened, and we start saying, "Oh, well, this also disappeared and that disappeared," and all of a sudden, we have a real mystery on our hands.
Mm-hmm. I didn't look into this, but hurricanes go up through the Bermuda Triangle at times, right?
Pretty much all the time.
All the time? Okay. So I can see back in the time that of those instances where they probably were not paying or didn't have the weather technology that we do today, and just things are gone and they didn't know that there was a storm out there.
I mean, yeah, I don't know. I'd have to look that up.
So I think one thing that we can kind of go over is some of our thoughts on the likelihood of each of these being a possibility. And we'll go over the paranormal stuff first. What are your thoughts on the Atlantis technology theory?
I mean, I think that's, at this moment, I think that's just a fictional theory. Atlantis in and of itself is just a theory. There is no evidence of Atlantis, and therefore to use it as a possibility or a probability of causing issues for aircraft and seacraft, I think we need to take that out of the equation. Crystal technology is still used today. It's used in modern watches. Pretty much every watch you have is run on a crystal, a quartz crystal in particular, in most cases. And so to think that there was some other technology being used by some civilization that we don't even know ever actually existed is to assume something that we're already assuming. If that makes sense. I mean, I know that sounds confusing, but we're assuming that these places or these vessels are going missing on the assumption that there's some sort of technology that's disrupting the modern technology.
Right. Well, and we'll go over this. Our Atlantis episode is next week, so we'll delve deep into why people thinking it's real. But the one thing I always remember is that Atlantis wasn't really brought up until Plato wrote about this utopia, whether it was fictional or he was making it a documented paper that people thought was just fiction. We can delve into that. But yeah, as far as we are made to know is that Atlantis wasn't around until Plato brought it up.
Right. Exactly. And you would think if it was around, there'd be other, evidence supporting it aside from Plato himself and earlier than Plato. We have documentation from some of the earliest civilizations ever, and some will say the earliest of civilizations, and yet we don't have one of Atlantis, which is very curious, unless, and of course, this would be a little bit of a rabbit trail. Probably a big rabbit trail. Sorry, guys. But let's jump into the book of Genesis for a moment, chapter 6 in particular. When you consider the flood, of course, the rise of the Nephilim, and if the Nephilim were truly a hybrid of angelic beings that had enormous power and could create a civilization like Atlantis and show them technology and how to build technology that we otherwise didn't know. And God deemed that as, bad, basically, as disruptive and a problem leading people away from him. Then there's a good chance that he would destroy that technology and erase it from existence through the flood and whatever other means necessary. That's not to say the evidence isn't out there, but I think finding that evidence is going to be very difficult if it does exist, because I think if indeed Atlantis was wiped out for that reason, much like Sodom and Gomorrah, then, it's been done purposefully. And whenever someone tries to destroy evidence purposely, it pretty much disappears, or at least that's the intent. So I don't know if it does exist. I think it's just going to take way more time than we have here on this earth to learn about it. At least you and I.
Yeah. Well, we'll go over all of the theories and all of that next week. But also going back to you talking about the Bible, same thing with Tower of Babel. It was destroyed because we were trying to use technology
to reach
God.
And yet here we are in modern day using technology to still reach God.
Right.
Some people will say it's not God they're trying to reach, but it's the same concept.
Right. The alien abduction theory. What are your thoughts on that?
The alien abduction theory, I think, holds a little more significance only because the amount of evidence that is stacked up for extraterrestrial abductions. We have stories centuries old about alien abductions. You look at ancient hieroglyphs, there is very much pictures, or at least what looks to be like pictorial evidence of some sort of saucer-like shape and people in space suits. So I think there is certainly a possibility here. It would explain why some of these things have disappeared and never shown up again. But again, this is all still theory. Unfortunately, we don't have significant evidence to even prove that extraterrestrial life exists, let alone that they fly around in spacecraft and are capable of abducting people or animals. I know how much aliens like their cows, but I don't know.
Yeah. Well, with the weird things that have gone around recently, yeah, I feel it's a plausible thing. Again, like you said, we don't have proof that aliens exist. With the invention of AI, with people always using the fake videos to say that things are real, that's where you run into way too much hoaxes. That's the word I was looking for. And yes, there have been a lot of people that have come out saying, yeah, there are underwater bases. Here's the evidence and the proof from not sonar, but uh, satellite technology. So, and that was another theory about Amelia Earhart as well, was that she was abducted by aliens. And not to throw out the nerd thing out there, but that was also a Star Trek episode that they found Amelia Earhart. She was abducted by these aliens years and years ago, and then they find her. Yeah, that one's. I think all three of these are probably not 100% believable, but it is an interesting theory. The time vortexes and portals.
I mean, it's going to be, again, repetitive in that we don't have evidence to support it, but we do have at least verbal descriptions of something similar happening.
Yeah.
People who have made it out of these vortexes. Now, the vortex, I think, is very possible because we do have evidence that supports the fact that there are instruments that tend to get all out of whack when in certain areas of the Bermuda Triangle, just randomly. Right. It's not a specific place whatsoever. It just happens randomly. Whether or not it's a vortex or something else altogether that is very much scientifically explainable, we don't have yet, but I do think the time vortex is very possible. And as for like wormholes, I mean, you and I have talked about the wormhole that you and I seem to have driven on multiple times when we were on our way to the gym and back. How it would always be faster coming back than it was going there, even though it was the exact same road going both directions. And again, this comes back to some of the alien abduction theories too, in that there have been individuals who claim to be out on the sea or in the air, and then they have missing time or on the road driving, and they see something, they witness something in the sky, and then boom, next thing they know, it's like 3 or 4 hours later, and they're on the side of the road in their vehicles. The same thing could certainly be happening here in the triangles as well. Again, what the source is causing that type of time slip, I have no idea. Is it natural? Is it made by man-made in some way? Is it made by some other entity altogether? Again, we don't have the instruments to test such a thing, but what we do have is the verbal evidence that supports at least the theory.
Right. Well, and something with the missing time thing, and I don't think it would be the same for ships and airplanes compared to like people driving on the road, but it has been proven that the brain, if it is bored, will go into an autopilot mode where it's going to its destination. And I've done it. I'm pretty sure you've done it, where you're driving and you end up where you were going, but you have no memory of the travel from where you were, the memory where you were till you got home.
Right.
Yeah. Because the in those instances with the ships and planes, primarily they're usually communicating consistently with land-based areas.
Right. And I will say that when it comes to time slips, I mean, I've witnessed time slips myself, and I'm sure you have too. Some of them are when I'm driving long distance and I'm very tired, and my mind is shut off, but I forget what they call it, but basically the body and the brain work mechanically outside of your own cognitive thought. So driving a car is second nature. You don't have to think about putting your foot on the gas and steering the wheel. It just happens when if you've been driving a long time. And so you can easily check out, not notice cars around you, and yet still respond to those vehicles around you. And I've done that multiple times, and it helps. Thankfully, it helps long distance travel seem shorter. Then there's other instances which I am very much embarrassed and sad to say, at a much younger age, of course, where maybe something like alcohol can also do the same thing in driving or whatever else, things you shouldn't be doing. But you're young and dumb and do things. And then again, you witness time slips. So there are obviously um, uh, very clear scientific explanations as to why we have time slips. And it's mostly due to our own minds that are checked out in some form or manner. But whether or not that's the case with all of these particular time slips that we've seen within some of these reviews, some of these books, some of the stories that we see online, one can only say. I mean, all we can do is take their story at face value.
Yeah. The severe weather. What do you think on that one?
Severe weather, I think that's very, very probable. Only because I know, like I said, I spend a lot of time in the tropics. Since I was 3 years old. So going down to this, southern North Carolina, and spent time in Georgia. I've been to Florida plenty of times, and even here again off of Lake Erie, like severe weather pops up out of nowhere. It's not on the radar, and then boom, all of a sudden it is, and you're in like a level 4, level 5 threat. So that is very, very possible that there are just freak storms that develop. They're strong enough to take out, whatever is flying or on the sea, and then boom, they scatter and disappear, and it's like nothing was ever there. And there's rarely ever any evidence left behind, especially in the middle of the ocean. Right on land, you can at least see damage, but in the ocean, it just looks the same before the storm and after.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think that's a very strong explanation, and I think it's a very strong possibility. Was that the case for every one of these cases? No, probably not. But at least for a few of them, I think it very much is a strong possibility.
Yeah. Well, and like I said, we didn't mention all of the instances, just the more well-known ones,
right?
Because there, like you mentioned, there have been instances where people seemingly disappear and then all of a sudden are back. They have no knowledge of how they got where they are, or they report before that happened mechanical errors were happening with the compass or even with other gauges on their ship or plane.
Mm-hmm.
So severe weather, yeah, especially around the 1880 mark. We didn't have the technology of radar in the sky and tracking weather as much as we do now. Gulf Stream, I think, is a pretty good possibility of at least not finding those ships and planes.
Mm-hmm.
Whether it caused them to go off course, I mean, I'm sure it's possible. How likely that is, I've never driven a boat, so I couldn't tell you.
Right.
The methane gas.
Yes, that one again. I mean, that's a tough one. I think there's a possibility, but again, I think, at least in more modern times, if there was indeed a true methane gas leak or whatever that's big enough to take down an entire cargo ship, then there would be some geological, what's the term I'm looking for? The
like seismic activity.
Yes, seismic activity that would easily be picked up by any number of sensors out there on buoys throughout the ocean, through the Atlantic and Pacific, for that matter. So using that as an account or a possibility for some of these, I mean, maybe in the early years, of seismic activity tracking and weather tracking, but more recently, I don't think so. Not at all. I don't think there's a chance that would happen and we wouldn't know about it.
Right. Well, and both the methane gas and the Gulf Stream would not explain for the airplanes that went missing, obviously. But
right.
So for the boats, yeah, I think, again, back when we didn't have the technology to track those things other than, holy crap, the ground is shaking. Yeah, I think that we probably wouldn't have noticed or known that it had happened. And then the human error and mechanical failure, we've already discussed it. In some of these instances, I think you could say yes, but in the majority of them, where the reports are happening of um, compasses going out or
Mhm.
other mechanical or gauge issues, I don't think it's as likely, especially like you mentioned, there were 5 ships that went in, didn't come out, and then the other ship went in searching for them and didn't come out.
Right. Well, yeah, and that you just can't
That would be a lot of
explain.
mechanical failure.
Right. That's a lot of mechanical failure. That's a lot of human error. That's a lot of all kinds of various things, right? So that one just can't be explained. I don't think. I don't think that could be explained at all. Um, and it doesn't make sense. Like that should not happen ever. And yet it's happened multiple times in 2 different areas of the world that happened, or at least seem to be interconnected in some very real way. Like if you were to drill a hole through the center of the Bermuda Triangle, you would come out roughly in the center of the Dragon's Triangle. And that's odd, right?
Mm,
That's super weird.
yeah. Well, and this isn't proven, but with the knowledge of ley lines and things of that nature, where that connection would be a possibility too, or the portals. But we've in the past have talked about the hollow Earth theory and stuff like that, and maybe there is some truth to that or not. I'm not saying I believe it, but it would make sense why those 2 areas would be connected, sort of a straight line from one to the other.
Right.
Um, any final thoughts? And don't say no and then say but.
Give me a moment to think. Um, no.
But
No, no, not even gonna say the word. I'm gonna
no
say
buts.
no.
Yeah, this is one that is a phenomenon that I've always been interested in, but can't say 100% if this phenomenon is real or not, or what the cause would be. But if you guys heard any flaws in what we came across, uh, definitely point it out to us. We don't like giving out wrong information, so we will gladly correct ourselves if need be. But definitely do the research and reach out to us, because there's a lot of different theories out there about the Bermuda Triangle, the Dragon Triangle, and we would love to hear others. So make sure you're putting in the comments of wherever you listen or watch. Next week, like I mentioned, we're going to do another fact or fiction. Was Atlantis real? And we'll delve deeper into the theories that are out there, because there's some interesting ones. If there's any evidence at all of Atlantis, again, we'll get into that. I know of some. And then we've got Richard Palamisano and Peter Rowe the week after that for the Complete Paranormal Investigation Handbook, which will be awesome for us because we've always wanted to write one. So it'll be interesting to see what they have in their handbook.
For sure.
But yeah, that's pretty much all we got for you guys. As always, make sure you like, share, subscribe, no matter where you're listening or watching. Again, this has been a pre-recorded show on 107.7 FM New Orleans, 105.3 FM on the Gulf Coast, and the United Public Radio Network. Make sure you're checking out all the great shows on UPRN. There's a lot there, and from my knowledge, we have at least one more coming on, probably a few more coming on. But until next week, where you'll find us same time, same channel. My name is Justin.
And I'm Erik. Peace.